Hello, my name is Joe Kramer. I'm an attorney here at Lipsitz, Pontario, and Comerford, and I am one of the partners in the firm. I want to talk to you today about Kodak, Kodak Park in particular in Rochester, New York. Kodak is a park in the sense that it had a large footprint. It covered over 1,200 acres in downtown Rochester. To give you a comparison, Kodak Park is about a third larger than Central Park in New York City. Well, that's pretty much where the similarity between Kodak and a park ends. If you didn't work at Kodak, you probably think of Kodak as a workplace where you'd have workers sitting in a pristine, dustless room, maybe white, wearing coveralls, brightly lit. The stone cold reality is that Kodak Park was a chemical company. A chemical company not very different than, say, Hooker Chemical in Niagara Falls, New York. When I say it's a chemical company, Kodak made film out of chemicals. They manufactured fluids used to develop film in developing labs across the country. And to do this, what they did is they had chemicals passing through hundreds of miles of pipe. It passed through pipe, it passed through associated equipment for the pipe, things such as boilers, and tanks and kettles and pumps and steam traps and valves. And most of these surfaces, they were heated. And anything that was heated at Kodak was covered with thermal asbestos insulation. Almost every inch of every surface in Kodak was covered by cancer-causing asbestos. In terms of how it was put up and taken down, until about 1973, which would have put us in the Nixon administration, OSHA didn't exist. In 1973, OSHA came into existence, and they regulated the amount of asbestos you could put in the air until eventually it came down today to darn near zero. But back in the day, how asbestos was installed and removed at Kodak was very, very different. Essentially, much of the asbestos at Kodak was up near the ceilings that are 20 or 30 feet in the air. And what would happen is that an insulator would climb up a ladder or get on a scaffold. He'd go up near the ceiling and he would cut a wire or a metal band which held the asbestos to the pipe covering. From there, gravity did the rest. He would let it drop 20 or 30 feet down onto the floor. It would shatter, much like if you dropped like a light bulb from your ceiling. It would break into many, many pieces, became very, very dusty. How we handle asbestos today is very, very different. Asbestos abatement, sometimes you'll see it in schools or factories, and what they do is they completely seal off the area. They hang up plastic sheathing. They make sure that every speck of asbestos is removed. They do air monitoring, and that plastic only comes down when it's clean. Back in the time from our grandfathers through the 1970s, how it was done is that it was done, asbestos was applied and removed in the very room that other workers continued to work in. So when this asbestos was dropped to the floor, it was cut, all this asbestos dust would go into the breathing zone, not only of the insulators and the pipe fitters and plumbers and steam fitters, but the factory workers who were just assigned to work in the areas. So what happened is, even after the work was being done with the insulation, is that millions and millions of asbestos fibers would remain floating around the room where these workers were working, not just for a day, not for a week, not for months, but it would linger there for years, with the workers continuously breathing it in, and in some instances taking it home to their family on the clothing that they wore to work. Sometimes the very pipes themselves were made of asbestos. Back from the time of your grandparents up until about the mid to late 1980s, a product called asbestos transite pipe, which is an asbestos cement pipe, was used at Kodak. It was used to do things like transport water. It was used to carry sewage. They used it transite conduit to protect electrical wires, and they would vent gases with vent pipe. They also used a second type of asbestos pipe at Kodak to deal with acids and other caustic materials. Metal is very poor for carrying acid or caustic material because the metal itself could dissolve. In modern times, they use a specialized plastic to carry those types of materials. Back in in the day, probably through the end of the 1970s, they would use an asbestos pipe to carry them. And like any pipe, it doesn't matter if it's the water pipe or the sewer pipe or this acid pipe, it had to be cut to size. It had to be removed at some point in time with a saw. And the most common equipment used to do that was a circular saw. It had a specialized abrasive disc on it, not very much unlike if you've seen a worker in your house cutting a ceramic tile. It was like that. And using an electric circular saw to cut an asbestos product is a very dusty process. Now, we started this discussion talking about the fact that Kodak was a chemical company and not so much a camera making facility. They did, in fact, in one building at Kodak Park, they made parts for cameras. They made them out of a very specialized plastic. It's called thermoset plastic, which is a lot different than, say, this plastic water glass or a soda bottle or a water bottle you might have at home, where those types of materials, when you're done with them, you throw them into a recycling bin or you take them back to the supermarket and they grind them up and they melt them down and they make something else out of them. Thermoset plastic used at Kodak, it was very different. It's what they call a one and done plastic, meaning that once it's heated up, once it's put in a mold and hardened, it can't be melted again. And how people were exposed to asbestos from this is pretty straightforward. It didn't come in like a block because it can't be melted more than once. It would come in a powdered form. It kind of looked like a dust or more like a dark kitty litter, like a granular material. It came shipped to Kodak from manufacturers in paper bags and in fiber barrels. And when you to make it into something, they would pour it out of these containers. That dust was laden with asbestos and it caused workers to be exposed. The other way is once the product was molded, it had to be finished. Now, if you've ever made a model airplane or perhaps a model car or something cheap like that, you'll remember the model came in, had little plastic sticks holding everything together, a little excess material, kind of if you put too much pancake batter in a waffle iron called flash. And what the workers at Kodak would do is they would have to clean off those sticks, they'd have to clean off that flash, and they would use either a sanding or grinding device to do that, which again caused dust. Which I guess brings us now to the conclusion. We hope that anyone watching this is doing it for informational purposes. We hope that you and your family never go on to develop an asbestos disease such as asbestosis, lung cancer, or mesothelioma. But if you find yourself in that position, we would be happy to talk to you. Please contact us. We'll come out to your house. We'll give you a free consultation. Thank you.